Some characters don't explode, they starve everyone else around them. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jack Lawrence, award-winning and best-selling mystery writer, former therapist. On this channel, I talk about psychology tips and tricks that bring depth and realism to your characters, your story, and your plot. So characters that withhold emotion generally have very deep feelings. They've just learned that expressing these can be dangerous. So what do I mean by that? These characters are going to have a lot of internal monologues, a lot of internal thoughts that they don't ever share with the other characters in the world around them. Because at some point when they did that, they learned that they're going to be ridiculed, they're going to be judged, somebody's not going to take them seriously, and they're not going to honor whatever it is that they're feeling. So it's safer for them to hold all of that inside. For them, it projects the idea of control, dignity, and perceived safety. Right? Nobody's going to be judging them. Nobody's going to ridicule them. Nobody's going to hold them accountable. And they can control what people around them know, or what they see, or feel, or believe. The issue with this is that it definitely damages most relationships. It's not beneficial, really, for any relationship, because it creates confusion, right? If you expect your partner to do something for you, how are they going to know if it's not expressed? How are they going to know something upsets you or bothers you if you don't tell them, right? So your character can go through this pattern in their relationships where they're withholding all this information, but yet getting upset with their partner for not knowing it, or their friend, or their boss, or whoever. It also creates insecurity. They feel like the person doesn't care about them because they're not honoring these thoughts and feelings that, by the way, they have no idea exist. So they start losing self-esteem. They start feeling like maybe they're not worthy, not valuable, all of those things, which in turn eventually leads to emotional imbalance. Other characters have to work harder, and then your character tends to lose power. Right, or whichever character this is, whether it's your main character or a side character, maybe a supporting character, whoever it is eventually is starting to lose power within their relationships, within themselves. And the other character in the scene is going to have to work a lot harder because they're trying to understand what's going on, but there's a lot of resistance. So as a writer, how do you project this to the reader? How do you show them that this character is withholding information? The easiest way is minimal reactions, right? If there's a fight, if there's an argument, if they're talking about something kind of heavy, and the character just isn't responding, they're very much just there, that's a pretty good sign, right? When I worked with couples, if one couple was spilling out emotional stuff, the other partner might sit there with their arms crossed, kind of guarded, right? This is a sign of somebody guarding themselves in therapy, or in general, really. And they just wouldn't react a whole lot, especially if the person was talking about things that they were doing. There just wouldn't be a lot of reaction. So they're guarding themselves somehow. Delayed response. They're thinking about what they want to say so that they don't feel like they sound stupid. They don't feel like they're saying the wrong thing. They're calculating how they're going to respond. Because if it's calculated, they're controlling what's said, they can control the narrative to some degree, there's that perceived protection. They focus on emotional factors practically, right? Emotions are not practical. They're based on experience, they're based on the idea of fear, safety, love, things like that, which are not necessarily practical in and of themselves. So in those emotional moments, they're overly practical and not as emotional as you might expect them to be. And absence is loud, right? If they're not present emotionally, mentally, a lot of times even physically, then that shows that there's a disconnect. That shows that they're kind of shutting down, they're trying to hide themselves to some degree. So how do you do this, go through all of this, and give your reader a big payback without your character having to have a huge meltdown? When somebody withholds, they never suddenly confess. They've spent however long, sometimes a few years, sometimes their entire life, at least for practical purposes, most of their lives, keeping things inside, withholding information, trying to stay safe. If this character is on the run from the law, if this character has had emotional trauma or physical trauma, psychological trauma, broken relationships, broken home, they're not going to just suddenly confess everything, no matter how strong of a relationship they're in, or who their friends are, who the side character is. It's not getting confessed. It's very subtle. They also tend to crack under pressure, but it's generally very brief. Because remember, they're holding all of this in. It's like a tea kettle, and it's whistling, it's about to boil over. They lift it up just enough to where it lets off the heat and it can cool off for a second, and then they put it back down, and they've got a little bit of time before the whistle comes back. But when things are emotionally tense, they're in a situation where they feel like they don't have a lot of control, the perception is that they're in danger, they're going to crack. Generally, they'll bounce back because they'll withhold even more. They'll retreat into themselves a little bit more. But there is that element of them folding under the pressure. And for your readers, those moments matter a hell of a lot more than if your character were to give some grand speech. So focus on the moments more than what the character says about those moments. If you found this video beneficial, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, because every week I drop a video sharing psychological tips and tricks that bring depth and realism to your story, your characters, and your plot.